Okay, hello. This is lesson number 19 in a series of lectures on how the United States is jamming Russia to start a new Cold War. Alright? And this lecture and the next several lectures are part of a series to prove that Russia lacks offensive military potential. Alright? And the first example I'm going to give is the Russo Chechen Wars. There are two of them. They're evidence of crap Russian military and their vulnerable underbelly for offensive operations. I'll explain that as we go along here. So Chechnya. First of all, Chechnya is but a tiny province in North Caucasus. All right. That declared independence from Russia in 1991. Soviet Union fell apart in 91, and a lot of the different provinces said, okay, we're breaking away, we're independent. Chechnya was one of them. All right. So here's the Caucasus between the Black Sea and the Caspian, this whole area here. Consider the Caucasus. Now, to show you how tiny Chechnya is, this is Russia. All right. All this is Russia, and Chechnya, you can't even see it, it's so small. Right? If you blow up this area right here, just this area here, blow it up, that's here. Right? Chechnya is even smaller than that. Right? It's tiny. Now Russia had to fight two wars against Chechnya, a tiny province in its own country, and it lost the first. Right? So Russia fought two wars to subdue Chechnya, right? You're not independent. And they lost the first war, 1994 to 96. Russia had to retreat. They backed out. And then Chechnya had de facto independence until 99, when the second war started. And then that war took 10 years to get it settled. I mean, Russia's probably going to say, we got to settle it in 1 year. Oh, bullshit. The fighting dragged on for 10 years. 1999 to 2009. Right, to reverse this independence. So, the great and fearsome Russian military, right, they lost a war to a tiny province within their own country, Chechnya. Right? And that's without Western proxy war assistance in Chechnya, right? I mean, these guys are terrorists. What Western country is going to give them weapons, right? Compare that to a proxy war with Western nations providing weapons. For example, right? If Russia was so stupid to, try to get Estonia or whatever, right, and the Baltic states, right? Why? I don't know. They're not worth crap. All right? But they're part of NATO. Same with Romania. Same with Poland. Right? Romania down there. All right? But like Belarus, Ukraine, not part of NATO. All right? But if Russia invaded them, you know that the Western nations are going to fuel a proxy war. All right? Now, they lost to Chechnya without any help like that. Just imagine how mired down Russia's going to get in a proxy war in a large country like Ukraine, right? Trying to hold all that territory, right? They're going to be bled dry. So even today, a significant guerrilla movement and terrorist attacks persist in Chechnya. So I'll just show you this list of terrorist attacks. These are still going on. Right? Major attacks up into 2014, the Sochi Olympics. Alright. Plus, the second war developed into a pan-Islamic movement called the Caucasus Emirates, which expands Russia's problems, right? Not just to Chechnya, but to the entire region. Right? So if you look at this map here, here's Chechnya. Well, all these little provinces, except for North Ossetia, are Islamic. And what happened with the second war, the war in Chechnya spread to a pan-Islamic unified front between these. Dagestan, Chechnya, Ingushetia, and Kabardino. Alright, all Islamic joining forces together. Well, that complicates Russia's problems. Now they got a bigger problem. And the key thing is here, Chechnya is part of Russia's southern border and is strategically vital for several reasons. Alright, one is there's oil and gas pipelines running through there. So here's some gas pipelines in green, running from the Shah Deniz fields out here, right? Baku, Shah Deniz, that's where they get the gases out here, right? Runs through Dagestan, runs through Chechnya, runs through Kabardino. Blue oil pipeline right here, running through Dagestan and Chechnya. All right? You think Russia can afford losing this? Hell no. And then it's Russia's gateway to the Middle East. All right? You know, so here's Chechnya. Right? Here's the Caucasus. Well, here's the Middle East right down here. There's Iran, there's Iraq, there's Syria. All right? And another potential problem is, you know, potential expansion of Turkish influence into this area. Why? Well, for one, let's see here. Here's Turkey, big country over here, right? It supports Azerbaijan, Muslim nation, Sunni nation here, right? Right? You know, what if Turkey, you know, wanted to expand its influence? That'd be big problems for Russia. These are Muslim principalities here, right? All right. So the Caucasus Emirates region is a powder keg, ready to explode into breakaway movements which Russia cannot afford. Why? Because of its strategic value. And if, for example, Russia were stupid enough to embark on an adventuristic military campaign, for example, attacking a Baltic state, well, they're part of NATO. They'd be stupid to do that. Or Ukraine or Belarus or whatever, Moldova. Like, why the hell would they, you know? But let's say the Caucasus Emirates, and especially Chechnya, would jump at the opportunity to break away. They've only been trying to break away for centuries. Since the 16th century, it's been non-stop conflict. I mean, come on. Right? Going back to the 16th century, all throughout it, we'll go through this list. Right? They're constantly trying to kick the Russians out. All right. As such, this strategic region is Russia's vulnerable underbelly. All right? You know, they try something, they're going to just, cats away, might as well play. You know, if Russia conducts a major military campaign, they're going to have to draw resources out of everywhere. Right? Pull the resources to, you know, especially if they're fighting a proxy war against the West. Right? Now, that's the cat's away. Then you know Chechenya's going to break free, and Russia can't afford that. So it's a vulnerable underbelly that hamstrings any major offensive military operation. All right? It's not that complicated. All right? It's pretty straightforward. All right, so let's take a look at Russia's piss-poor military performance in the Chechen Wars. First thing is, there was ineffective command and control and intelligence. You know, gathering intelligence, location of, you know, key forces, key assets. Right? If they got artillery, you know, they're not finding it. Officers openly rebelled, and by January 1995, the army was close to mutiny, almost refusing to obey the ridiculous orders of its commanders and the government in Moscow. Unquote. Right? I mean, that's some severe morale and cohesion problems there. Right? That's undermining your warfighting ability. Lack of cohesion at all levels. Quote, there was backbiting between units and senior commanders. Right? All levels. Was so alarming. Ground force troops and internal troops distrusted each other. All right? And the Air Force, and quote, Air Force felt little concern towards supporting those fighting on the ground. And, quote, hardly anyone wearing a uniform trusted the politicians in Moscow. Right? Right? I mean, the Russians are more savvy. They don't trust these guys. They probably think a bunch of corrupt oligarchs. I mean, look at Americans. Americans, right? You know, so many Americans just want to beat their chest and fuel their ego and wave the flag and say USA, USA, and they'll you know, everything that the politicians do is good, right? Well, Russians aren't that stupid, right? All right, small unit cohesion was appalling. There prevails a widespread culture of hazing, called some Russian word, that is brutal and often lethal. I mean, there's a lot of cases where these recruits die during hazing. I mean, that's stupid. You want to be tough. You want to make them tough. You want to create a sense of, you know, elitism. All right? But the key goal is team. Right? This undermines that, which undermines small unit cohesion, which is so vital to all forms of combat. Right? From large-scale conventional to guerrilla. Alright, so vital professional NCO Corps was essentially non-existent. Right? These are the guys, you know, who are in direct contact with the enlisted men, who train them. They're the direct leaders of these guys. Right? Direct trainers and leaders. Right? They're non-existent. With sergeants and being conscripts with only a few extra months of training. I mean, with that, they're not going to be competent. They can't teach. They're going to have a whole force of incompetent soldiers. And junior officers performing the roles of NCOs in Western armies. So they're the ones performing the roles of NCO. Junior officers. Right? Performing the roles of non-commissioned officers. The senior enlisted. So Russian soldiers were dispirited, they were disorganized, poorly led, badly fed and cold, without any clear idea of why they were fighting. Pay was low and often late. They sold their weapons. You'll see over here, they sold the weapons for food. Their supply problems are so bad the Russian soldiers couldn't get food. They're cold, they're hungry, and they're selling their weapons to the enemy. That's like an insane situation. Morale was generally poor, and there was massive levels of draft dodging and desertion during both wars. Gross disregard for strategy, no attempt to understand the fundamental fighting motives of Chechen rebels, which is an essential military strategy. Right? Why? Because that's the thing you want to attack. That's the thing you want to undermine and undercut. Their fundamental underlying motivation. Right? And they did the opposite. They fueled Chechen morale. Right? You know, they gave them their, you know, remember the Alamo, remember the Maine, remember Pearl Harbor, right? You know, any atrocity does that. Poor tactics, barbaric, indiscriminate destruction of urban centers with carpet bombing and massive artillery barrages with little heed to the collateral damage, alienating nearly the entire Chechen Russian population, fueling motivation to fight, indiscriminate, brutal Russian tactics causing collateral killing of civilians, galvanized resistance, and radicalized fighters. Quote, the atrocities committed by the Russian army during the Russian invasion in 1994 were the major cause of the spread of radical Islam in Chechnya. Right? Prior to that, most of these guys were moderate Muslims. Right? After that, they're all radical jihadists, you know, Allah Akbar screaming, you know, whatever. So this is reminiscent of U.S. Iraq invasion war policies. All right? How you fueled radical Islamic. All right? So I taught this, right? You know, it's very unlikely anyone remembers, I know. But I taught this chart on the Iraq invasion war and how the invasion itself, but especially the screwed up policies from de-Baathification, taking down the government, taking down the military, all right, destroying the economy, destroying all the civil services, all right, and then you have policies of mass detention, indiscriminate arrest, combined with torture and massive amounts of humiliation. Right? These are the things that fueled the formation of ISIS, all right, radical jihadism, Al Qaeda in Iraq, all right. Stupid. Now I know the response in social reality is going to be, "That's crazy, unbelievable. I don't remember that." Yeah, I know you don't remember anything. All right. Russian generals not only committed their own soldiers to suicidal attacks, but often destroyed anything or anyone incident to their pursuit of Chechen rebels. Right? So they're just laying a broad swath of destruction, killing a lot of collateral damage, killing a lot of innocents, and that just fuels the opposition. Right? Heavy armor had little value in Chechnya, and T-80 tanks, that's a large heavy tank, older version of Russian tank, right, are proven vulnerable to RPG attacks. Having no reactive armor installed, that's explosive armor designed to stop shape charges, which was pilfered to sell the explosives on the black market. So I mean, there's corruption, there's theft, they're taking off the reactive armor to make money on the black market. I mean, it's piss poor crap material readiness, right? You know, they had major supply problems. You'll see that more in the Georgian war next, right? Logistical problems. Russian military was severely underfunded, receiving only 30 to 40% of funding needed to maintain fighting condition. Right? They had big fiscal problems in Russia. Right? A weak economy. Supply system grossly inadequate. Not enough food for the troops. So there's lack of discipline. Right? And this goes to down here. You create more opposition. So there's a high amount of looting, rape, murder, and rampant crime. I mean, you in the military, you got to whack this. You got to cut this down. This only fuels the opposition. All right. Okay. Rebels would often rearm themselves simply by buying guns from Russians. Soldiers desperate for some food and drink would sell their weapons. Right. Morale hit rock bottom. Some 540 NCOs and officers, including at least a dozen generals, resigned rather than serve in the war or on receiving especially objectionable orders. Right? I mean, all power to these guys. Right? You know, nothing worse than a coward who's looking out for their career and who's going to do immoral crap. Right? Just to support their own damn career. I mean, people like that are scum. Right? Every unit was undermanned. During the Second Chechen War, beginning around 2002, militant strategy shifted from Chechen independence to a broader pan-Islamic regional movement called the Caucasus Emirate, which united Dagestanis, Ingushetians, and Kabardins and other local peoples against Moscow's rule and the corrupt and ineffectual local government. So that's what I told you before, right? So here's Chechnya. Well, it's spread to the region, right? Kabardino, Ingushetia, Chechnya, and Dagestan. Everyone except North Ossetia, which along with South Ossetia are pro-Russian. So these are I think they're Christian too. These guys are Christian. Right? These are Muslim, Islamic, right? They joined forces and are radicalized. All right, posing a big problem for Russia. All right, the movement was fueled, quote, as a combination of unemployment, corruption, and mismanagement, sparked nationalist insurgencies that used the rhetoric of Islam as a unifying element. All right, I was going to rewrite that. It took until 2009 to sufficiently disable the separatist forces, but simmering conflict continues today. Now, a low-level insurgency has enveloped the North Caucasus, as well as targeting civilians elsewhere in Russia with terrorist attacks. right? So this is spreading throughout Russia. And here's an example. Since the wake of the First Chechen War, beginning as early as 1996, Chechnya has been, quote, a hotbed of crime and terror that continues today. They caused the Moscow Theater terrorist attack in 2002, a train attack in 2003, a school attack, and this was bad, like over 300 people died, mostly kids. Moscow Metro train attack, 2 passenger plane attacks, Moscow Metro again, an airport attack, a series of suicide bombings preceding the Sochi Olympics in 2014. So it took Russia 2 wars to subdue Chechnya, and they lost the first war. Now it's now under nominal control of this dictator. I'm not going to try to say his name. He's a brutal dictator and a puppet of Putin. Russia has to back Chechnya with 80% of the Chechen budget. I mean, it's just a burden, and it's a continuous thorn in the side for Russia, right? So Chechnya has been and will continue to be a thorn in the side of Russia and a vulnerable underbelly that will continue to hamstring Russian offensive military potential. Why? Because they run off and do some, adventuristic offensive campaign somewhere, in their backside, they're going to break free, right? And they can't afford that in that strategic area. Currently, it is a powder keg set to explode, and worse, you got the Emirates now. It's not just Chechnya, it's the region. So, there's centuries-old Russian-Chechen conflict. Beginning early, like 16th century, Russians started moving into the area, and you had a coalition of these groups led by the Sultan, all right? They defeated the Russians. Then there was a Chechen uprising in 1785 to 94, all right? And in the early 19th century, early 1800s, there were 2 Russian military expeditions which were defeated by the Chechens, all right? Russians keep losing these, right? And then you had the Caucasus War, 1817 to 64, and then you had the Crimean War, in which the Chechens supported the Turkish Ottomans, who were fighting the Russians with the British and French. And then you had the 1878 Chechen Rebellion during the Russo-Turkish War. The Chechens. See, whenever there's a war, Chechens take the opportunity to break away. I'm going to underline this. I'm going to highlight this. So Russian-Turkish War. Then you had the Russian Revolution. That's a Bolshevik revolution. And, Chechnya said, we're independent, right? And then Stalin had to offer broad autonomy for Chechnya to pull them back in 1921. Then you had a Chechen uprising in 1932. In 43, you had Soviet ethnic cleansing of Chechens. Then you had the First Chechen War. This was due to the breakdown of the Soviet Union. And Russia lost this war. Then you had the Second Chechen War. And then you have continued Chechen terrorism through today. So Chechnya has been a source of incessant problems for Russia. It has high strategic value that Russia cannot lose. It's a powder keg ready to explode. And it's Russia's vulnerable underbelly that hamstrings any major offensive war. Right? You think it's easy for Russia to go invade some other country? Right? I mean, this is just one of the problems. And then this proved that Russia has crap military potential. They lost the first war. I mean, hello, McFly. I mean, you have to knock on people's heads here. Right? All right. So that's that. First evidence of Russia crap military potential and other vulnerable underbelly for offensive operations. Right? The whole idea, they're going to go and, conquer into Europe and remake their empire. It's just insanity, right? but not in social reality, which doesn't require any intelligence or knowledge.